All right. So typically I'll just make a slight introduction and we'll go from there. I usually like to start kind of from the beginning, a little bit like family growing up and how you get to where you are and kind of
Yeah,
what was the catalyst. And then usually like to end on something, um, what's like something that's been kind of beneficial or you never would have expected out of this journey.
for
So,
sure.
all right. Let me see. No, we don't want the note taker.
That note taker on Zoom is a pain in the you know what.
Yes, somebody I don't know. I interviewed somebody and they had me install it or I think and I thought it was just for that meeting and then
Mm,
of course every time after it
every time. Yep.
yeah, and then I can't like get it off. I'm like, and I've tried. I try to like disable it and all kinds of stuff. It's bananas, you know?
It is
AI,
banana. Yes.
AI, AI. All
Yeah.
right, here we go.
Let go. Asteroid of fear.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Men of the House podcast. And today we are talking to Jennifer Chase, and she is a coach, and you can find her at riseaddiction.com. And that's what we're going to talk about today. As you listeners know, addiction runs deep in my family on both sides. And so I'm excited to talk to someone else and see what we can figure out here and give you guys some tips or at least some perspective, as that's what we're all about here is shifting that perspective so we can get to where we need to go. Um, hopefully in time. So how's it going today?
Good. Just a quick cleanup. My website is actually Rise Addiction LC, the
Oh,
letters
okay.
C.com. I don't want to confuse anybody if they try to get there and can't find me, but
I didn't have my glasses on. I
that's
took them off.
okay. That's okay. I'm doing really well. I'm excited to have this conversation for sure.
Yeah. So, speaking of, we'll start from the beginning. Because as we know, ev I feel like we're learning more and more. That 30 or 40 years ago is kind of what's manifesting now. So whatever we were doing or whatever was being input into our brain, whatever we were observing and dreaming of imitating as we grew up, being an adult, whatever that was, has led us here. And
For sure.
it's interesting because I was a live-in caregiver for a 97-year-old veteran, and he was a professor at Texas A&M, and he retired because he said that some of the professors that were coming in, I guess the word for it now would be woke, but that was in the 80s, and so kind of what we're seeing now is all those professors and people who came in and they start teaching or pushing agendas that way. And what you end up with 30 or 40 years later is kind of the world we're in. And so it was kind of interesting to look back and piece that together of saying, understanding that that's why he stopped wanting to be a professor is because the people that were coming in. And he was, born in 1927, definitely conservative,
Yeah.
Christian, old school. And, I am too. But as the world changes, it's, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of, I don't know how you want to say, um, I don't know that I'm that extreme, but it is, I definitely think it's just kind of enlightening to see and really think about when you get into the depths of it, because I'm 49. And so I think about the 80s and the 90s and what life was like. And I try to look for the signs of, how things were maybe getting more progressive or liberal or things were changing. And, but to see how it stretches and ends up here. And, yeah, but we're in interesting times, and especially because we're starting to see, as we wrap this back into substances and addiction, we're starting to see how people are kind of waking up to alcohol.
Yeah.
And if we go back to, what I was saying 30 or 40 years ago, the views, how it was marketed, um, the world's perception of alcohol or drinking in general was totally different. And we're starting to see kind of more of a wake up, I guess, if you will. And I think people are just becoming more conscious of um, alcohol, what it does, and kind of as the opposition of that taking the edge off at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The normalcy that was kind of whether it was portrayed by grandparents, parents on TV, kind of what you saw.
Yeah.
It was kind of the norm. So speaking of norm, where did you grow up and how was your childhood?
So that's a great question. I was actually born in London, England. My dad worked for a company named Boise Cascade, and so we moved quite literally about every 2 years for the better part of my life. So I've lived in all different places. Super amazing blessing and some challenges when you move that often. But so I too come from long lines of addiction. So I've been able to find 4 generations down my mom's side and 4 generations down my dad's side.
Wow.
Mm. And most of that was alcoholism. I had a grandma and an aunt that were opiate addicts in like the 50s before that
Yeah.
was kind of a cool thing to be. But for the most part, my family kind of danced in the dynamic of alcoholism. And unfortunately, I'm a statistic in that, which says 1 out of every 4 little girl and 1 out of every 6 little boy who's raised in that kind of dynamic are sexually abused. And I was sexually abused by my mom's dad, who was also an alcoholic.
Oh,
Um, and my dad was also an alcoholic. So the truth is, I didn't really know any different growing up, right? Like it was normal to be at the lake and everyone to crack one open at 9 o'clock in the morning, and every single night of my
yeah.
life. My dad would drink in the evenings, and he was an incredibly functional alcoholic, right? Great, I mean, very successful businessman who just let off some steam. I'm quotation for the people I'm quoting
Yeah.
right now for the people that can't see me. Let off some steam, right? And he deserved that after providing for his family and doing all of the things that he did for a day. At least that was the perspective. And so I didn't really know any different. But when you talk about what was your childhood like, unpredictable,
Mm.
not particularly safe. Um, I definitely was the black sheep, if you will, at a really young age. I like to call us the truth tellers, by the way, not
Mm.
black sheeps. But I was the one that was like saying, "What is going on here? This isn't normal," from a very, very, very young age. Um, I remember at the age of 4 asking my mom why I felt this way inside.
Wow. What
Um,
did she say?
she said, "Well, that's just normal. Everybody feels that way."
Mm.
The age of 4 was the first time that I barricaded or isolated. For those of us that are addicts, understand the word isolation. The age of 4 is the first time that I barricaded myself in my bedroom with like all my stuffed animals and record players and stuff that I could accumulate from my bedroom up against my door so the outside world could not get in.
Mm.
Um, when I reflect on it, it's like I felt like everybody had a manual to do life. Like, if you get a flat tire,
Mm.
page 35, if your heart gets broken, 172, if you get mad at your mom, page 35, whatever. And when I was born, they were like, sorry, kid, you're going to have to do this one on your own.
What did you you talked about being molested by your father's dad.
Mother's dad.
Mother's
Yep.
dad
Yep.
were was the family always around and close in proximity as you were growing up with the moving and whatnot?
Well, see, this is the interesting thing about the sexual abuse in my family. So, my grandfather was a twin,
Uh-huh.
and they both abused children. So, you have to assume that there was probably some abuse that happened when they were growing up. So, the grooming process in my home was generational, right? So, I would
Do
have,
you think they groomed unconsciously?
oh, well, that's an interesting question.
You
I
know,
don't
by behavior. I mean, maybe once they're aware and they know that they're doing it, but if it's done to you, then maybe you subconsciously pick that up. And because
yeah,
you talked about it being generational, of it's like if you were an outsider looking in, it's easier to spot the oddity. But if
yeah.
everybody's odd in the same way, it's,
I liken it a little bit to the way that I tried to get people to do what I want when I was an addict, right? You can
yeah.
call it manipulation or you can call it whatever. Like, I need you to do this in order for me to be able to keep this status quo of
Hmm.
being an addict, right? And so I liken it a little bit to that. So they were probably abused. I don't know before that. I haven't done any kind of investigation on that. My mom was abused, so her generation was abused. And then us. So I have a sister who doesn't feel like she was abused, and then I have a cousin who was 9 years older than me that was definitely abused. So the problem was like, Mom, I love you if you're listening, but um, like they would let us take baths with him, right? Because
Oh,
that's what they knew, right? That so you speak
yeah.
about generational pieces. Like she says, I just didn't know. It was just normal. It
It's
was just
modeled.
it sent, it seemed to be. And so that's how this thing survived generationally was kind of that grooming.
Man, that is,
Yeah.
I, well, I would say logically, given my education, I probably know that this goes on, but I've never talked to anyone in real life that that set of circumstances where it's almost within the family. It seems like
Yeah.
something I would see on Investigation Discovery at
It was
10 p.m.
the fabric of my family. I mean,
Man,
not only was it in it, but it was like the fabric, and everybody kept the secret. So my mom's pretty certain that her mom knew what was going on all along. My
right?
mom tells stories of like she'd wake up in the morning and her next door neighbors will have moved in the
Oh,
middle of the night. Um, I have some other family members that were of the same generation as my grandfather that I know knew, right? It was like the fabric of who we were was this secret that was going on in my family. It's pretty,
yeah.
I mean,
It's
awful.
well, and I come from a Latin family, and we don't talk about much. And my uncle in the 90s passed away from AIDS from IV drug use because he had moved to Germany and married somebody there. And, in the 70s, got addicted to heroin.
Mhm.
And, but to see somebody who was 6 foot something, 200 and something pounds go to something small, a shell of himself. But it was kind of like I knew, but like nobody talked about it. It was completely silent. And then I think I asked once and they were like, yes, that's what it is. But too, in the 90s, it was so much more taboo as well because um it was more, people, whether it was IV drug use or homosexuality, you know, and
Yeah,
things were just different in the 90s and what was talked about and what wasn't. And I can tell you in a Latino family, it definitely never was talked about. And, the, I don't know. I mean, yes, there's shame and different types of things around it, but then nobody else gets the
yeah.
benefit of learning.
Well, and
or
I think that
understanding the
that's
truth.
Yeah, I think that's why my family tried to mute the truth teller in me, if you will, right? Because there is a lot of consequences to this little girl that just starts saying something's going on, something's wrong, right? It's important for this family to keep rolling the way that it's been rolling generationally to make sure that she stays quiet.
Now,
Um,
how did you fare in school given this kind of situation? So I would assume you either did really poorly or did really well to mask it all up.
Yeah, I did well. I was on the good side of it, but interestingly enough, I still like acted out. So I remember when I was in the fifth grade, I painted with eyeshadow a black eye on my eye, and I went to school and I said my dad had hit me. And this is the thing about my dad. Yes, he was an alcoholic, but he was my guy, right? Like my dad
Yeah.
and I were a tremendous amount alike. I knew if there was one person on this planet that loved me, it was him. Like he was my guy. And yet I went to school and said that I had hit me, that somebody had hit me, he had hit me. And really, I look back at that now in reflection and I'm like, what were you doing? And the truth is, I was trying to get any other adult to get down on my level and say, sweet baby girl, what's going on at your house? Because from the outside, my home looked amazing. Like everybody, we had, my parents weren't good spouses to one another, but they were great parents in the sense that we were very involved, all these extracurricular activities. My dad and my mom were prominent people in society, like all the things, right? We had the money, we had the whatever. And so I was just trying to get somebody to understand that how it looked from the outside was not how it felt from the inside. Um, but instead, they just, every time called my mom and said, come get the crazy one.
Mm.
What's wrong with this girl? Your other two seem to be okay, but this one is crazy. Um,
How
and
would
so,
your mom deal with that?
well, my mom and I, if my dad was my person, my mother and I were not, right? If she spoke German, I spoke Chinese. Still to this day, we do not speak the same language. We don't understand one another. Um, and so my mom was always sort of at a loss.
Yeah.
Um, and she'll report today that she knew something was wrong, but she couldn't really get my dad on board to figure out what it was. Like he didn't really want to participate. And I think she knew if I was going to do that work, my dad had to be involved because he was really the only one that I like connected with.
Yeah.
Um, so she just didn't know what to do with me. I mean, and I think that that's where a lot of my shame came from was just this like basically my hands are I just don't even know what to do with this child. um, and which just perpetuated the idea inside of me that I was the problem. Right? There was all these common denominators in my life. There was my abuse from my grandfather, my dad's alcoholism, my mother and I that don't connect, my siblings that really like to hang out with each other but didn't really like to hang out with me. Like the common denominator to all of that and with all my limited life experience was me. I was the problem. I was the one that was broken.
That's how I feel sometimes. Like, I don't know if I guess it's part of the identity of an addict of
Yeah.
um going, the shame or and that going, I'm the common denominator of
Yeah.
every bad situation, every bad thing that's happened. And, for me, it always leads to the place of, well, if I remove myself, be it through suicidal ideation or walking away, whatever it is, um, then the group would be better off,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, like I guess my wife or somebody would say that like that's a crazy concept, but it doesn't really seem crazy to me
No, I
because
understand it completely.
like on a professional level or a team sport, if your
Yeah.
team's losing and this person's the common dropping the
Yeah.
passes or not hitting the target, then you get rid of them, you swap them out.
I was just talking to a client yesterday and she was asking me about some of my experience. And I said, I got to be honest with you. Right before I stopped using, I went through about 6 months of a lot of suicide attempts, a lot of sort of wanting to die. And I
Yeah.
told her in that moment, I promise you, and I mean this with my full chest, I thought it was the most selfless thing that I could do for the people that I loved and the world that I felt like I had taken so much from by that point in my own addiction. Like I thought it was like the most loving thing that I could do.
I agree.
And so I 100%, this is the other thing. I've talked to a lot of addicts. I worked with a lot of addicts for 7 years. I worked kind of in the treatment field. And so have had the blessing of, being able to pick some of those folks' brains. And this is the thing. I've never met one addict, and this includes me, um, and we'll get to some other family members that I have
Hmm.
um, that are addicts. We all feel like a square peg in a round hole. Every single one of us. Um, and that's where shame exudes from, right? That's where the beginning of this thing is usually in our family units. So our original nuclear family, we have felt like a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah.
And
Almost in the world too.
yep, yep, yep,
Like I don't know, uh I can remember kind of like being in school of like where I felt like I got along with everybody, where some people are kind of particular people, or we're not gonna hang around these people, they're scrubs, and I was kind of always like um for everybody in a way.
yeah,
Which, I but I never could understand the other people like, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but also I mean, I still feel that way a lot of times as you go out into the world of I mean, especially as of lately, I I go, I don't know, maybe I feel like I feel too much,
Yes.
like you
Yeah.
absorb the world and
Yep.
the world is just
The other
so
characteristic.
mean and
Yep.
hateful and it
Yep.
just kind of brings you down and you kind of have this feeling of you you feel like a little kid amongst adults fighting and you're like, can't we just all get along?
Yeah. Well,
And
and you
meanwhile, you
go
feel
back
like
to
you're
the,
being ignored and you're off destroying yourself because the adults won't stop fighting.
yeah. Well, and you speak about the feeling very deeply, right? That's the other characteristic, is that it's like and I can see this so much in my son, which is like the world is almost like he feels too deeply for the world,
Yes,
especially in this time, right?
that's
It's like he takes things that go on in the world as like they're happening to him personally. That's how he feels. Um, and substance became the solution to that, right? So substance, and I say this out loud to anybody that's listening. If you have a listener out there that's like, I've got this child that's an addict and I cannot figure them out. Substance is not the problem. Substance is the solution to the problem. 100%, right? So it's the solution to feeling like a square peg in a round hole. It's the solution to feeling too deeply. It's the solution to some trauma probably that's been experienced. Like I use substance as a solution to the problem. And it wasn't until the consequences of that started to outweigh the benefits, which by the way, again, if you have people listening that aren't addicts and don't understand what I'm about ready to say, there are so many benefits to being a drug addict. So many, right? And it wasn't until the consequences of that started to outweigh the benefits that I even considered doing life without it because it was so much the solution for me.
yeah, I feel like I heard this podcast where there was a addiction specialist talking about um he had said something, but it was, when you said it was the solution, it reminded me of that in that he was saying something that, well, even if somebody was, let's say, using opiates, but they really have ADD,
Yeah.
it's providing something. It's giving them something of that root cause. It's providing a solution, but
Yep.
you still haven't dug down and figured out
Yep.
that, hey, it's ADHD or it's that. But whatever this substance is, gives the right amount of
Yep.
focus or
Yep.
whatever it
It
is.
stops the noise,
Yeah.
right? We have a lot of ADD folks that use substance to just quiet this because they don't have any other coping skills or know of any other coping skills to do it. And this is the thing about us. Um, we know how to fix it quick, right?
Mhm.
A lot of us are like, I'm not going to wait 90 days for some pill to work because I know how to fix it in the moment, right? In that sort of moment of I mean that you gotta fix it right now,
Yeah.
right? And that's the thing. So I'm a quote girl. I love quotes. My higher power speaks to me in quotes. And sometimes I'll hear a quote and it won't mean anything. And the next time I'll hear it and it will penetrate my soul.
Wow.
Um, and the one that is so like my number one quote is by a man named Joseph Campbell. And the quote is, "The cave I fear to enter holds the treasure I seek." And it is so reflective to me about my own disease because the treasure that I was reflecting or that I desired was like peace and serenity and worth and value and self-love and all those things, right? But I never had enough courage to go inside of the cave to get it. I just used substance as this quasi, you know, attempt to find the treasure. And when I got sober, it was like, oh, if we're going to stay sober, then we got to go inside of the cave because substance was the only coping mechanism I ever had, right? It was with like life was good, I got high. When it was bad, I got high. When I was anxious, I got high. Like it was the only thing I knew how to do to cope with life. And to go inside of my cave to find this treasure, I was going to have to learn some more coping skills and I was going to have to go inside and, pull up a chair and learn some lessons and heal from the sexual abuse and heal from my dad being an alcoholic and there's some the whole reason I became an opiate addict in the first place was when I was 29 I had a brain tumor, um, and when they removed it, it was benign, but it was hemorrhaging, and they caused massive nerve damage in my head, which led me to chronic pain. And I had had to say goodbye to my children as though I wasn't going to wake up from that surgery. And the fact is, they didn't know if I was going to wake up from that surgery. And so some of those experiences that I had, and then I became an addict in 2003, back in the days of wild overprescription, wildly
Well,
overprescribed.
let's take one step back. When did you first try substances and what was the first one?
So the first one I ever tried was alcohol. But maybe the most important thing about me was I was not going to do it like these yay holes before me.
Yeah. Now, was
Right?
it in high school or was it at home with
So
parents?
I drank my first time when I was a freshman in high school. Um, if you can even imagine, my first time I got drunk on Kahlua of all things.
Hmm.
I still to this day have never, well, I don't drink anymore,
Yeah.
but um so when I was 15, 14, 15, when I was a freshman in high school, but I was always hyper aware about alcohol because I was never going to be an alcoholic. So even in high school, when I was around people that were drinking, like if there needed to be a designated driver or if somebody needed to watch for cops or whatever it was, like I was your girl because I didn't want to drink. I just wanted to belong, right? I
Right.
just wanted to fit in. And so I would do it occasionally under those, and I would overdrink. There were times where I clearly overdrank, but I was very, very aware of it. Um, and then I drank a lot more in college and would even say that I had a binge drinking concern. But again, hyper aware, right? So I
Right.
was like, well, alcoholics drink 6 or 7 nights a week, and I'm only drinking blackout drink for 3 or 4 days. So
Well, not
we're
only that, it's college. I mean,
right.
it's
It's
kind of
college,
what you're supposed to
right?
do.
Yep. And then I came home from college and met my husband, and we had our kids, and there was very little to no substance in my home. In fact, I tell this story. I was so sure that I had sort of breaking the chains of this thing and the generation curse that was going on in my family that I called both of my parents one night and just told them that I had more courage in my pinky finger than they had in their whole body.
Mm.
Can you imagine that call? Um, and then it was a Friday night in January 3rd, 2003. And I had a headache, and I had had headaches my whole life. I had probably up to that point had 20 scans over the years. And so we went to the hospital. They gave me a shot. I came home. My husband took the kids to our friend's house because it was the college football championship.
Hmm.
And the phone rang. It woke me up. Got up to let the dog out. And when I stood up, I was like, oh, something doesn't feel right. So he left the kids with the friends and came and got me. And we went back to the hospital and they scanned me. And they came back and they said, Jennifer, I don't know. This is big and it's bleeding. Um, and once they figured out what it was, they gave me about 12 hours to live if they hadn't gone in and had a successful surgery. Um, and because of the bleeding, again, it caused nerve damage, which led me on my path to opiate addiction. And so um, I was prescribed, I've been to the Mayo Clinic, I've been to all of these different places, right, trying to
Hmm.
find a solution to my medical condition. And because it was during that time, early 2000s, the doctors felt really powerless over taking care of my pain. And so I was prescribed more opiates than I can even like you would be shocked if I told you what I was prescribed on a monthly basis. So of course I got addicted. I have the trauma, I have the means for the substance, right? And I had the medical condition that kept it going.
Mm.
And
So what was the so you said they gave you a shot, and was that a opiate style shot, or when did you first get the like, the when did it hit and you were like, "Oh, I'm onto something."
so I liked it, and I would go to the hospital very rarely because I would have these headaches, and they would give
Right.
me like Demerol shot back then.
Okay.
And I don't get I always liked it, right? But it
Right.
never sort of became like, oh my gosh, I need more of that. Um, I had been home from surgery for about a week. So I was in the hospital for a week and been home for a week. So I was about 2 weeks out from surgery. I was laying in my bed. I could hear my family. We were a like throw balls, play football kind of family inside of our house. Like pretty much all, you can do
Mm-hmm.
whatever you want. I could hear them playing this football game out in my living room. And I'm in my bed high, and I said out loud, as though there were another 10 people sitting in the room with me, where the hell has this been my whole life?
Mm.
And that was the moment, right? That was the last moment I had choice. I was addicted to that emotional part of like, oh my God, I can finally breathe. I'm going to be okay. It doesn't matter that I felt like my mom didn't love me or that my dad wasn't consistent and that my grandpa, like in that moment, none of that mattered. And I was finally, for the first time in my life, going to be okay.
Mm. What what kind of thoughts did you have around it? Did you, other than I'm gonna be okay, did you have a dichotomal type of oh fuck?
No, not then. In that moment, there was none of that. It was just like, oh my God, finally. Why
Did
did
you
this?
ever given your parents' history, your ability to observe and claiming like, hey, I'm not gonna be like these yahoos over here, did you ever think that you had an addictive trait, personality?
Oh, 100% I knew that I had the biology,
Okay.
right? 100% I did. Like there was never, but I had focused so much on not being an alcoholic.
Mm,
I had focused so much on that sort of chain. And here these doctors were prescribing me this medication. I thought, well, for sure it's
yeah,
fine. For
yeah.
sure the adult in the room knows that this is going to be okay and that they know how this works, right? And so I think that that lowered the
Yeah,
concern for me.
yeah.
And then it just, I mean, at that point I was off to the races.
Yeah, it makes sense too, especially, I mean, I grew up with asthma, and the treatment in the 80s was like theophylline and prednisone daily for like, 4 years. And so when you're 7, 8, 9 years old, and you take medicine daily, it was the same with I had a spontaneous rupture of my eardrum at 9 years old, and that was the first time they gave me codeine, like Tylenol 3 at the
Yeah.
hospital. And yeah, it it's interesting.
I just thought that they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, well, but like you said,
Right?
it's medicine, and so it's
Yeah.
prescribed, and you're like, oh, well, this is safe. But
Yeah.
but of course, too, I don't know at that time, were there, I mean, I don't know. It's like you think back of like alcohol, cigarettes, they all have warning labels. Of course, they got warning labels, but I was wondering, like, did the opiates back in that day, did they have warning labels? You know?
I mean, no. I mean, I was going into it's again wild the amount that I was prescribed, but I was going into the doctor's office every 3 days to get a shot on top of the things that I was being prescribed, on top of going to the ER because I had an open standing, you can go to the ER
Right.
and get an IV 4 times a month, right? Like it was just these sort of because and I understand it. I don't fault necessarily the doctors. I understand that they were like, what are we going to do with, because I was suicidal from the pain. I was in significant amount of pain. And so they're trying, and so I had these two things going on. And I say this too because I think that this is one of the reasons. My beautiful husband, who I've been married to for almost 29 years, is the consummate enabler, right? Like I used for 14 years and he was not responsible for that use, but he helped through his enabling and his removing consequences from me and him making it easier for me. I tell like if my prescription was due on Tuesday, he was at the pharmacist at midnight 01 on that Tuesday to pick up my prescription.
Mm,
Um, but I say this, and I think part of the reason why it went on as long as it did was I had this medical condition combined to this now addiction. And people were so fearful and so empathetic and compassionate about what I was going through with my chronic pain that I think it just enabled, it put people
yeah.
more in a rescue and enabling place. And that's, I think, part of the reason why it lasted as long as it did.
So when when did it come to your attention that you had a problem? At what year in this treatment? So you started off at 29, you said you had 14 years of it.
Yeah.
During at what point after being prescribed were you like, "Oh, this is a problem," and that you had to either start thinking, making arrangements of how long you could extend it out, how long you were going to do this, and start thinking about, well, are the doctors going to, with your course of treatment, is it to come off? And did you have concerns about that?
So I would say looking back, probably year 6 or 7 is when I started to know, okay, this isn't normal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm having to like steal from Peter to pay Paul when we're talking about my medications based on like when it was going to be
Right.
prescribed, what I would have left. Right. I was starting to have to do a lot of figuring out about how it all works. I was starting, there was more arguments happening with family now, right? My nuclear family was concerned. My husband, there were more fights around my husband. Like I knew around year 6 or 7. Now I wasn't even close. Like the consequences were still not outweighing the benefits, not even close.
Mm.
Um, and so there was still obviously lots and lots of years. Yes, to answer your question, the more heightened this opiate crisis began, and the more news that I would watch about doctors being
Mm-hmm.
arrested and they're not prescribing anymore, I would just have full-blown anxiety attacks.
Mm.
Uh, because I just knew that one day, and it was getting harder. The pharmacists were starting to ask questions. The prescription, like it was getting a little more complicated. And so the anxiety of all of that for sure was starting to be heightened.
And how was your medical condition coming along at the time? You said it was benign, but the nerve damage continued with pain. Was that continuing on? Was that the
Yeah.
reason for the prescription?
Yeah, it was. And so in 2011, so that was 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
no, 8 years.
Eight.
I can't do math. Yeah, after my surgery, I went back in and had another brain surgery because what happened was all of those nerves that they cut. So my surgery was back in the back. It was in this my tumor was in my cerebellum. So when they cut through those main cranial nerves, they
Mm-hmm.
all grew back into a ball.
Mm.
And so in 2011, I went back in for another surgery for them to kind of cut all of those nerves in the back of my head, thinking that that will help. It helped a little bit, but not certainly. I still have chronic pain. I knew the day that I was going to get sober that I was going to have chronic pain, and that was going to be something that I was going to have to live with. But yes, that is why they just kept prescribing.
Yeah, that I spent 6 years in a level one trauma center, and medical's kind of my background. And so it's interesting because, we would have people and they would have kind of the plans, like you said, um, come in once a month or
Hmm.
4 times a month and,
Yeah.
standing orders and stuff like that. And yeah, but my time in the ER was 2009 to 2015, I think, or
Hmm.
2008. And, um, but you weren't seeing, you didn't see a lot of for headaches, but maybe for like broken bones and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
But we had what they were called like 33s. And if they would come in like requesting pain medication and they would have like a care plan that they couldn't have any. I remember this one time this guy came in like backboarded, needed a shot of morphine or Dilaudid or something. He couldn't walk, he couldn't anything. And they were like, oh no, you got a care plan,
Yeah.
no pain medication for you. He jumped up off the backboard and walked out. I was like, holy cow. But yeah, some interesting
I
stuff.
and I gotta be honest, like I've got some trauma in and around the emergency room.
Hmm.
Um, and I understand that those people, it's their job to keep people safe, but I also know that I was treated like a third world citizen
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes going into a facility like that. It's not lost on me. So I'm deathly allergic to bees, and there's been a couple of times since I've been sober that I've had to go back to the emergency room. Even I've been back to the emergency room for headaches, where they give me a different sort of cocktail of medications that
Right.
doesn't pain medicine. I'm treated like a completely different human being, and so it wasn't great. It wasn't great being an addict by any stretch of the imagination. Um, but again, the benefits were outweighing the consequences of this thing, and they did for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and the crazy thing is, you know, kind of like you said, is it it changes the way you're treated, but the fact of the matter is like you said, you're still going to have pain,
Yep.
especially, given what you had and um, you
Well,
know,
and both things were true. I was addicted to opiates. That's true, but I was also in chronic pain. Also true, right? So when I would go to the hospital and they thought I was faking my pain to get pain meds, that was incorrect. But I also I mean it the whole experience, and I understand from a medical standpoint, but I do feel like as a whole, the medical community has to take some responsibility for those of us that got into the situation that we got into, right? The end of the day, when I put my head down on my pillow, I'm the one that deals with the consequences, but I wasn't the only one in this game.
yeah, and not only that though, it's I was in management and it's 15 to 20 minutes per patient kind of a thing and it's given your situation, it's like the time is the issue, that we don't have enough time to treat people to listen to all the factors and the story of what makes you kind of a unique, complex patient and to figure
Yeah,
out how to really address it because it requires multiple tools and different
yeah,
approaches. And like you said, you weren't the only one responsible. I mean,
yeah,
the medical community as a whole, whether they were being financially incentivized or however they were being incentivized to do it, they still did it, you know?
yeah, yeah,
Somebody a lot of people benefited from it, or else they wouldn't have been doing it,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know? And so, yeah, they have to take that kind of responsibility. And, they've launched all these suits and whatever for damages, but they have to, that's one side of it. Now you have a patient like you who still requires treatment, still has to go to the ER and use these services. Now that side of it has to change along with this other side,
Yeah.
because like you said, it was both parties. And,
Yeah.
this behavior, this thing, it's going to follow people throughout the entire healthcare system. I did primary care, and had an urgent care, but we had ortho and cardiology and everybody come visit. So not just the ER, because somebody like yourself, you're
Yeah.
going to see all the specialties and it's
Yeah.
going to follow you throughout. And so they definitely need to, uh, if lawsuits and compensation were the thing that they're doing on this side, they need to figure out what they need to do on the
Yeah.
medical side for the patients.
Yeah. The system's broken, no doubt.
Yeah,
But
that's why I haven't gone back.
yeah, but the truth is, I have some gratitude for all of it because if I hadn't gone through every single step of that, I'm not sure I'd be here with you today. I'm not sure that I would have the life that I have today. And so, I'm one that it's like, yeah, I hope at the end of the day that everybody can kind of learn from the experience, but I certainly don't hold any resentment for it because I'm pretty grateful at this point that that's helped me get where I am today.
So, what did it look like? So we kind of covered you. What did it look like for the people around you, your nuclear family, and how did it impact them? And yeah,
Well, it wasn't good. Let me just say that.
it never is.
So when I got sick, my kids were 2 and 5. And when I got sober, my kids were 18 and 21. So the majority, the significant, bulk of their childhood, I was in active addiction. I would say my daughter tells a story that when she was in high school, she remembers saying to her friend, I don't think my mom's in pain. I think my mom's a drug addict. Like it was the first time that she put sort of started delineating between, I think we're beyond this chronic pain thing. And that's what I was talking to you about earlier. I think there was a lot of empathy and compassion for what I was going through medically that people just kind of went along with the behaviors or the circumstances. Um, Again, my husband was a great enabler. And so he just held all of the plates up in the air, right? He took care of the kids. He went to work, so I didn't have to. He, got medication for me when I needed it. He, all the things. And he did all of that because he loves me, right?
Right.
And it wasn't because he was, attempting to make it go longer than it needed to. It was just all he knew. And then my beautiful boy, I found out in October of 2017 that my son had become addicted to my opiates.
Mm.
Um, I knew, so he is, I said this earlier, he's a very deep feeler. He's a very sensitive boy. Definitely has felt like a square peg in a round hole. I knew that watching him grow up. When he was 14 or 15, I knew that he had started smoking marijuana for his mental health. So he struggled with anxiety and depression. I wasn't a fan of it, but I also was like, well, there's some things that I'm powerless over, and I'm a raging addict right now too.
Right.
So, um, and I knew that was happening, but there was an event that happened in October of 2017 where I found out and realized that he had become addicted to my opiates. In turn, in like I try to soften this because if he were to ever listen to a podcast that I do, but the truth is, I became my son's drug dealer.
Yeah.
Inadvertently, of course, it wasn't on purpose. But that was the beginning of the end for me. That was the beginning of me trying to find a way out of this. And I shared with you earlier that I had shared with a client that there were months that I tried to complete suicide, and that was during that period of time where I just thought that if I could just die, that my family, my husband would be free to love again, my daughter would heal, my son would heal, like all of these people that I adored more than anything in the world would be set free from the impact of my addiction. And then when that didn't work, because I guess when you're raised as much addiction as me, we have great livers, and I
Mm.
couldn't quite get that thing done. Every day I would, attempt to take more than I had done the day before. And I finally got to the point was like, okay, how do I stop being, what's plan B? And the goal was to stop being my son's drug dealer. Um, so my son graduated from high school May 27th, 2017, and I checked myself into a facility on May 28th, 2017.
Um, how how did that conversation go with the family? And had you made your son aware that you knew he was
Oh
addicted?
yeah, he knew. Yep, he
Okay.
knew that we knew. We kind of banished him to his room to sort of detox off of them. I became obsessed about like I would count my pills every day, or we would put him in a safe, and he would get him out of the safe. Like it was just the insanity of what was going on, right?
Right.
Um, So yes, he knew. The way that it went, it was the day after he graduated from high school. It was during Memorial Day weekend. He and all of his friends and my daughter were all and her friends were all out at the fire pit on at our house, and my husband and I were inside. And I said, "It's time to go." I knew the day before
Hmm.
that I was going to do it, but I didn't tell anybody because I had said I'm going to quit a million times. And
Right.
so I knew that my words meant nothing. So I knew the night before that I was going to quit. And so the next day, it was around 5 o'clock in the evening, and I looked at my husband and I said, "Let's go." Um, and the whole goal that I had in that moment was not to be abstinent. Like I didn't even consider recovery, right? Like I just wanted to learn how to not be my son's drug dealer. I wanted to get fewer drugs in the house. I wanted to lower my tolerance. I wanted to use like a gentle lady, right? I
Hmm.
didn't want to go in there without I didn't want to come out without my solution to life. Um, but then what transpired when I was in treatment just kind of changed everything. And what I realized after being there for 28 days was the only way to save my son was to save myself.
Now, um, do do people ever go into treatment with the idea of, like you said, coming out with your solutions still intact?
I don't know. I did. I
Like as a tolerance, like to lower tolerance. Most people go to quit. I don't think
Yeah,
I've
not
ever heard
me.
anybody go, I'm just going to like lower my
Nope.
tolerance.
Nope. I wanted to detox off of it so that I could spend 28 days there. I wouldn't need so much coming out.
Uh-huh.
I would get so many out of, I mean, it was wild, the thought process that I had going in. But again, it speaks to the fact that this was the solution to all of it for me. I was so afraid of going in this proverbial cave and dealing with the abuse and dealing with the shame and dealing with the relationships, the ones with the relationship with my mom. By
Right.
that time, my dad had already passed of alcoholism in 2015. So that wasn't one, but I was going to have to deal with this relationship with my mom and my siblings, and I was going to have to figure out how to deal with my husband, right? Like I didn't want to do that without my solution. And so I swear on all things holy, I walked into that into that place with the idea we're just going to lessen the damage here.
And what changed your mind? Was it a particular sharing session, something, a prayer, a moment alone? What was it that changed your mind of like, I'm going from tolerance break to uh the only way to fix my son is to fix myself.
So I don't know if you've ever heard the saying of the opposite of addiction is connection. But that is ultimately what changed my whole life. I was in a group of about 20 people, and I would say there was five of us there that I felt like I had known my entire life. Like they understood my shame. They understood this addiction. They understood my struggles, and I didn't even have to communicate it or articulate it
And you
because they
didn't
were
feel
like,
judged about it.
yeah. And it was the first time outside of telling my husband that I had told anybody that I had been sexually abused other than my mother when she told me I was a liar. And I started to realize in there, I remember this so clearly. It was a night we were done with a meeting, and I said, "Can I just say this out loud?" I said, I was sexually abused, and I was walking to my room that night. There was a woman that came up to me, bawling, sobbing, weeping, and she said, "Jennifer, I was raped when I was 16, and you're the first person I ever told." And in that moment, I realized it's like, oh, we all have a story. We all use substance as a solution to something, right? People ask me, what's the kind of, do you think like marijuana is the gateway drug to, heavier substance? I think trauma is the gateway drug
Yeah.
to substance. And when I started to realize that, it was like, oh, the shame lessened a little bit. The shame lessened a little bit. And I was like, oh, I'm not broken. This happened to me, right? I never took responsibility for what they did to me. Like I was never like, oh, I must have been the problem in that, right? I could always see fault, but I could never untangle it.
Well, they say
And
it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility.
it is my responsibility. But I never, some people that are abused or look at it and it's like, oh, well, I shouldn't have done this, or I was this way and so they abused me. I was never like that. Like I could always see like you were the animal in this deal, not
Right.
me. Um, but I realized it's like, oh, trauma is what got us here. um, and trauma can be anything to anyone, right?
Yeah.
And in that moment is when I realized that I need, in order to save my son, I've got to save me. And his trauma led him to substance, and I had to model what getting out of this thing looked like. I had modeled what being a drug addict looked like his most of his whole life, right? And now it was time for me to do something hard and model what getting out of this thing looked like.
Oh, yeah, that's what I think about. Like, so my daughter is very much like me, and
Mm,
um, we have that connection, and she's 11, but I quit alcohol about 2 years ago, and she was a proponent of that, but it was kind of that same thought process of she
yeah.
has to see me stop. She saw and was well aware of when I was a drinker, and now she's seen me, not be a drinker, but
Mm,
now the challenge is still her seeing me learn how to cope and use tools because,
yeah.
it was probably maybe a month ago that I lost my temper a little bit and it was soul crushing in that,
Yeah.
I told her, I was like, because it scared her to see me lose
Yeah.
my temper, but it was like this, I was upset because I'm like, I can't even blame it on alcohol, you know?
Mm.
And it's like, so yeah, you quit drinking 2 years ago, but you still got some of the same bullshit you need to
It's
figure
because you
out.
still got a cave, right? You still
Yes.
got the same bullshit because you still got the life work of the stuff that's inside of the cave.
And then I started therapy 2 weeks ago. And
Oh, good. Well, and this is
so,
the thing. This is the thing. So, uh, I say this to a lot of people, which is you may never be able to stop your child who is like us, right?
right.
And you can, it's like watching a train wreck. You can see it coming, right? And you may not even be able to stop them from using substance, but they will know how to get out of it when they're done, right?
Mhm.
And this is exempt. My son used for another 3 years after I got sober. And it was the hardest 3 years. It's why I do the work that I do today, which is with families, right? Trying to help kind of navigate this thing with families and have families start contributing to the solution rather than the problem and all those things. But the hardest 3 years of my life was when I got sober, but my son was still using. And every day I would just get up and I would say, okay, we're just going to model because one day we're going to plant seeds. And one day I just know that he's going to say, Mama, I need your help. I need your help because I've seen you do this. I know you know what to do. And
Mhm.
one day I was at work and my husband called me and I was with a client and I didn't answer. I don't know if you have in your family, but if somebody calls
Yeah.
twice, you pick up the phone. And the phone rang again, and I picked it up, and he said, "You need to come home." And I was like, "Well, I can't. I'm with a client." He said, "Now," and hung up the phone. And I came home and walked in, and my son was sitting in my entryway in the corner. And he looked up at me and he said, "Mom, I'm done. I need your help."
Mm.
And I said, "Well, here's some numbers, here's some places, here's some states that they're in. You got to do this, right? Mama's not going to do this for you. You got to do this." And it was in the middle of COVID, and he decided to go somewhere in Utah. And we drove him down there. And as we're walking up to the facility, again, it was during COVID, so we weren't going to be able to go in. And he's put his arm around me and he said, "I need you to know if you hadn't gotten sober, we wouldn't be here."
Mm.
And I tell people that story because if at any point during those 3 years when he told me that he preferred me as an effing drug addict, or he hated me, or I'm the one that ruined his life, at any point that I had been like, "I don't even know why I'm doing this, I'm just going to go get high," it would have it would have eliminated that moment. I did all the hard things when I didn't want to, and I didn't feel like it was making any progress, and I didn't feel like it was helping him. I just moved forward and did the things for hope that we were going to have that day.
Um, how, oh man, like uh, well, ugh.
Tell me what you're thinking.
While I hope I never have to
Yeah,
experience that, I can, I, I feel it because my
yeah,
daughter is so much like me, and part of the last 2 years of, choosing not to go back to corporate, quitting alcohol, starting a podcast, doing all this stuff is that attempt to go, because my daughter was the one that suggested I start a podcast when I was
mm,
reapplying to go back to corporate. And she's like, do you really want 2 a.m. phone calls anymore? And blah, blah, blah. And it was like, so you're doing this to model something different because she's seen you model all your bullshit all the other years.
yep,
And, but I still struggle going in the cave and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, when you said all those years you did the hard thing, kind of not knowing, unknowing if it's making a difference, but knowing that if that day arrived, it would be because of that. And knowing that you modeling that was the only way he was going to fix himself or to even have the courage to do so. And, I'm in that stage of, I'm in the years, the 3 year period. I mean, my 11-year-old's not addicted to drugs or anything,
right,
but,
right,
figuratively speaking, of I know how she is mood and
yeah,
mentally,
hmm,
and very much like me in that when she is of age or a teenager, I don't want her reaching for solutions.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
I'm in that stage of going, because she recommended the podcast, I go, well, our kids don't always listen, but they see, they observe what we do. And so what I do is more important than what she's going to hear on the podcast, but this will always be here for when she gets ready to
yeah,
listen.
yeah.
And so
Well, and this is
how
the
how did
thing.
you how did you stick through it, the tough times, and not give in to say, fuck it, I'm gonna go get high,
Yeah. Oh,
or did any suicidal ideation creep back in, that whole like, fuck, I did all this and I'm sober now, and now my son, and if I
yeah,
weren't around, if I hadn't done this, because I know there's got to be some shame with, if I had never fucking done this, then this wouldn't be happen. Um,
yeah.
yeah, tell me about that.
So I have had suicidal ideation since I got sober, but all of it, and it's very fleeting, and it's
Hmm.
very like I've been sober for over 8 years, and it's probably happened 2 or 3 times, and it's always around pain. So it's always when I'm in significant pain, and I try all the things right now,
Right.
which are like meditation and journaling and exercise and the medications that I can use, and sometimes the pain gets still so debilitating and it's so defeating that sometimes I will slip into that, but never around this kind of stuff. I don't know exactly. I'm writing a book right now, and I'm trying
Mm.
to articulate some of these things because when I got sober, there was such a strong feeling inside of me that I had done so much damage and that I had so much shame around that. And the only way I could make sense of my shame and help heal from it was to every single day do hard. Every single day to choose to do the opposite of what I had done before based on sort of um, weakness. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think addiction is weakness, but that's what it felt like for me in that moment, right? And so I would get up every day. Look, I've sat in counseling offices where my daughter read a letter to me, and I would start to say something, and the counselor looked at me and said, I need you to shut the fuck up right now.
Mm.
Right. And so I just sit there and listen. I've been through counseling sessions with my son. I went through this, and it's like there's something about experiencing that actually helps me resolve my shame because I'm sitting there doing hard, and they deserve me to do hard. They deserve me to do hard today, tomorrow, yesterday, right? What they experienced in their life for those 14 years, I can't go back and change. I can't change any of their experience, but I can promise them moving forward that I'm going to do hard.
Mm.
And that's one of the ways why I think our relationships have changed so much. I mean, wildly, my daughter and I are best friends, and that I don't even have I couldn't have even predicted that in any
Well,
circumstance.
the other reason I've done and kind of like your term, choose to do hard is because, while my relationship with my parents is kind of okay now, I didn't talk to my dad for 10 years. And, I do not want my daughter to
Yeah.
have like when she's gonna need me most, maybe in her teens and 20s and all that. I don't want to have the relationship that me and my parents had when I was in my 20s, which was
Yeah.
fucking run away.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the coping skills, right? You got substance and you got running away. Do removing myself from anything hard. And so now the way that I model to both of them, because my daughter's not an addict, but she certainly
Right.
has consequences to growing up with a mom that's an addict, right? She's
Right.
got pretty severe abandonment issues. She's got some things. And so one of the ways that I model that is like, okay, like let's teach you coping skills that I didn't have, right?
Yeah.
That I'm learning that I can pass on. Sometimes that's by modeling, and sometimes that's by communicating if they're open to it. Um, but that's been the hardest part of, I mean, the hardest, not not necessarily the mental hardest part. The mental hardest part is like still dealing with the shame and dealing with the
Right.
things inside of my cave. That will be forever my life work. But the hardest part about being sober outside of that is dealing with and not being defensive to how this thing manifests in their life from now until the end of time.
Mm.
My son is a recovering addict who struggles with some mental health, and he has chosen, and he gets to not be medicated. And so he, can do this,
Yeah.
not have a safety net underneath, and watching him come to the bottom and not save him and not take responsibility for it and not feel full of shame still is tremendously difficult for me.
Yeah. No, I get that because I
I mean, I have shame that he has my biology,
Yeah, no,
right?
I get it.
I,
I get it. You're like, why did I choose to procreate?
yeah,
Because
he's so much like me, and
you're
I
like, I
feel
just
so bad
fucking,
for it.
yeah, you're like, how selfish of it was me
Yeah,
to fucking pass on
yeah,
this disease I fucking got to someone. Like,
yeah.
yeah, no, I get it. I get
And
it.
it's hard.
And you
It's hard.
feel, yeah, where, man, that's the hard part. The shame is
Yeah.
Like,
The
oh,
shame will forever be my life work.
how do you
There,
deal with it? What are some tools and techniques you use?
well, the good news is I do this for a living now, right? And I try to help people. I give people, I teach them these coping skills. And so I would be a pretty shitty life coach and a pretty shitty human if I didn't try to do them myself, right? So a lot of the tools that I use is I use a lot of meditation. So meditation helps me with my shame, but it also helps me with my chronic pain. I do a tremendous amount of writing. So journaling, a lot of us think that journaling is like needs to be publishable or we can't do it. And this is the thing. Journaling can be lists, it can be scribble, it can be anger thoughts, it
Whatever.
can be a lot of things, right? So it can be, I hate to call it writing because writing means that it's articulate and it's not always articulate. Um, I have found that exercise is a must in my
Yes.
life for shame. And when I'm feeling a lot of anxiety, I got to go for a run. And that's been incredibly helpful. I find joy now, which helps me with my shame in things that like gardening, right? Where it's very grounding, very earth, very, I find a lot of, if I need to go to nature, I'll go to nature. And then there are some days where it's called work, right? I got to sit inside the cave. Counseling is a must for me. I do it religiously twice a month, and as long as I am breathing, I will keep doing it because I got to do the work. I can't run away. I can't go on a run for 9 miles and think that it's going to run away from the shame that I'm experiencing or the pain that I'm experiencing. I got to deal with the root cause of that. I've got to deal with my shame.
Man, what's crazy was I had this there was there was there was this period where I would go on like two, sometimes three 1 hour walks a day. And um but I could I could mask it because I was training for a 22-mile
Mm.
thing. And so it's like, but yeah, the real reason is because I felt like I just needed to like go, or you're just uncomfortable. But
Yeah, you got to ask yourself, are you doing it for the mental clearness or are you avoiding, right? Like those are you could be doing the same activity with
hmm
different different scenarios. And so I've got to check in with myself because I'm an avoider, right? I'm an escaper. I'm a runner. When things get hard, I get the hell out, right? And or the old version of me used to do that. And so I've got to check in with myself and I've got to say, like, why are you going on a 6 mile run right now?
now do you is there a spiritual component to your
Oh,
recovery?
yes. Um, and to me, that's where it all starts.
Because I know
I
like some people like in AA, they're like to admit they're powerless and seek a higher power. Like me personally, I'm I'm Christian, but um I also, having dabbled in psychedelics and been
Yeah,
around the world somewhat, um I while I'm Christian, I believe you could call it the universe,
yeah,
you can call it
yeah,
whatever you want. I say it's like water. Every
yeah.
culture, every country has it. We all call it something different, but we all need it
Yep.
and we all
Yeah,
know what
and
it
for
is.
me that started when I was in that treatment facility. I mean, I believed that God had kind of left me when I was a 2-year-old, 3-year-old little girl, right? It was like he, like everybody else, thought this one's not worth saving. We're just gonna
hmm
we're just gonna move on.
Now, was there
Uh,
any spirituality in your family growing up?
yeah, I mean, we were baptized, we went to church.
Okay.
I was Christian. We weren't like it wasn't like hardcore.
Right.
But yes, there was this introduction and an understanding about God in my home. But I never had a personal connection. I never felt influenced personally, right? It was like this outside thing that everybody kind of experienced, but I didn't feel it in my heart. Um, and then when I was in that facility, I started to build this connection. So I would say connection. You heard me say that the opposite of addiction is connection, and that's
Right.
true for me, but it's three different points. It's like a step stool, if you will, of connection points. The first one was spiritually. I had to start figuring out what I believed, and I had to start connecting to this thing that I believed in personally. The second one was connecting with other people, and then the third one, and the last one, dare I say, even was connecting with myself.
Yeah.
Um, and this spiritual connection that I have found, um, I mean, it's where my gratitude comes from. It's where my willingness to do hard comes from. It's this understanding that it's like, okay, I see now you didn't leave me when I was 2 or 3. I see that there were evil people doing evil things. You've been right next to me the whole time, right?
Hmm.
And almost like I knew that as soon as we got here, I was going to be able to, this is God talking, I'm going to be able to use this to help all of these other people. But you had to go, I had to go through it. I had to go through the abuse. I had to go through my dad being an alcoholic. I had to go through near-death experiences. I had to go through my son being an addict in order to be right here, right now with you, helping the people that I'm helping, living the life I have today. And I can't get there without having an incredibly strong connection spiritually.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Did you feel it? When you said, I mean, because essentially, when you're sobering up, it's a surrender.
Yeah,
And so, you said you felt like it had left it too.
yeah,
Was it an actual visceral feeling for
yeah.
you?
Yep. And I can still feel it, right? It still is a visceral feeling for me. Um, and and look, because of we're human beings and we're life and it's life,
Mm-hmm.
we meander our way through this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at any point where I'm like, no, I got this, and I pull away, and it's not pulling away, but it's being complacent, if you will, with that connection, something happens that gets me back there,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that is a lot of I mean, the only thing that makes sense to me now is prayers have gotten pretty short for me these days.
Mm-hmm.
They're give me the ability to deal with whatever your will is in my life. Your will in my children's life, give me the courage to deal with that. Like, just give me courage, open doors, and I'll walk through them, and give me the courage to do it. And that's not rainbows and butterflies,
No,
right? My spiritual connection isn't like, oh, I'm so blessed, I don't have any problems. Um,
it's more
my
like I trust, send
Yes,
me and
I'm gonna
give
be
me
okay.
give me the courage to
Yep. Open the doors and I will walk through as a warrior.
now how this is the other one. How did you start to redevelop some self-worth?
That is a really interesting question because um, I didn't have any, obviously. I thought that I was like the gum on the bottom of somebody's shoe. And I think what started was one of the biggest components for me was service. And the more I would serve other people without getting needing or requiring something back, it's like, oh, maybe I am not such a piece of you know what on the bottom
Mm-hmm.
of somebody's shoe. And that started the ball. And then this connection that you and I are talking about spiritually, it's like, oh, I'm not a piece of you know what. God walked me through. I had to go all through all of these things in order to be able to help people. And so if that's true, if God did that, then I'm not that's like I'm not the worst of the worst, right? I was just doing the legwork to get me here today. And all of those things started to change. And then I started professionally working with other addicts and alcoholics, which really helped. Like again, a service, I mean, I was getting paid, but it was still this like
Yeah.
use the things that had happened to me to help benefit somebody else. And I'm not going to blow smoke up anyone's rear end. There
Mm-hmm.
are days where I wake up that I still feel like that gum on the bottom of somebody's shoe, right? That's the work. That's the cave work.
Yeah.
And it's my life work. And so it's not gone
Well, that's what
completely.
makes you human, and
Yeah.
especially as a coach helping people is, you're subject to bad days
Yep.
too.
Yep.
Um, how did you how did you learn to trust yourself? Because I know like that's where I have a little bit of issue of sometimes is like you've made a bunch of undesirable choices and you're like, fuck, I don't know if I should trust myself. And so I can very much relate to you in And sometimes, like, if I leave it up to me, I'll screw it all up. So, God, you just tell me what you want me to do and I'll do it.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it to me, I'm bound to take us off a cliff for sure. Um, and so that creates kind of some self-trust issues. How did you kind of learn to create some self-trust with yourself again?
And I think you just touched on it, which is I trusted more in my higher power than I trusted in myself, right? So what that looked like for me was a lot of prayer, a lot of meditation, and I'm one of those people that like my gut knows when when I feel strongly that I'm being led in one direction or the other, I feel it in my gut. And so I just started being like, well, I feel like this is what you want me to do, not what I want to do. Like my decisions are pretty shitty, if you
Yeah.
will. My path tells me I don't make great decisions. So I'm going to just try this, right? And even when it was wrong, at least I knew my intention was to do it right.
Oh, yeah.
Right? My intention was to be mindful
It's
about it.
coming from pure heart.
Yes. And so that gave me a little bit of like, well, we're not going to hit it. But this is the most important thing that I've learned. I say this little thing, and I started to actually say this before I got sober. And it's perfection is not required. And this is what I know. I know that in my life, again, even before I got sober, that I expect perfection from other people. Let me give you a little example of what I'm talking about. If somebody walks into your kitchen and they accidentally break a mug and it's full of coffee and you lose your mind because now this coffee is spilt all over your kitchen. They didn't mean to. The intention was for them not to do it, but they did it. Then I'm expecting them to be perfect. I'm mad because they're not perfect. They didn't mean to drop the cup. Right now, if they walked into my kitchen and they purposefully threw it down, then I'm going to be pissed and you're an asshole.
Yeah.
But if they just simply dropped it and I'm mad, I'm expecting perfection from them. Right. And then I started to realize that, oh, I expected perfection from other people because I expected it from myself. Like my version of the threshold to be liked, loved, seen, appreciated, valued was that I needed to be perfect.
I
And
agree.
that was the only way that I was going to be loved or seen or valued is if I was perfect. And so when I started to allow other people to not be perfect, I started to allow myself to not be perfect. And that helped me with my self love. I knew, like, okay, was the intention that you went in and smashed the mug? Or was the intention that you just accidentally dropped it? And I started to give myself some grace if I just accidentally dropped it.
Yeah. How do
And so I tell people every single day, perfection's not required.
how do you control the self-talk around that?
Well, I have a horrible critic inside of me. Horrible, horrible, horrible critic inside of me that can get really loud if I'm not careful, right? And so again, counseling helps, but when I start hearing the critic inside of me that's not helping, not helpful, a lot of times I do go for a run or I do start doing some journaling that helps with those. So I've got to, if substance was the only coping skill that I ever had, I've got to add like 10 coping skills to that one, right?
Yeah. Oh,
I
I know.
do.
I know. I know. And
And
routine is
so,
big for me. If I miss
yeah.
my morning, like whether it's it's like reading, journaling, something positive, exercise. Um, and I thought about this. We went on vacation, and even when we're on vacation, I wake up before everybody, so I can still get my exercise and my journaling and stuff in. But, I thought maybe the reason I don't really enjoy vacation is because the lack of structure, routine, and because of my affliction. I almost need structure, routine, because when things are left, you
Yes.
know, too far
That's
out,
why a
then
lot of people thrive in prison,
yeah,
right? And because for all your listeners out there, you can still get drugs in prison, right? It's
yeah.
not like it's a drug-free zone, but some people thrive in that because and my son said this, I'll never forget. My son was in treatment and he called me and he said, I just had an epiphany today. And I was like, tell me about it. And he's like, I need structure and I don't know how to create it for myself.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
was like, oh my gosh, right? And it's the whole idea of what you're talking about as addicts. We need the structure, right? We need the routine, but we aren't good at creating it for ourselves.
Hmm.
And so it's something he still, I am fairly okay with
Hmm.
create. So I make my bed every morning. Why? Because somebody told me when I was about 5 days sober that I should. And it starts that routine, right? It starts
Yeah.
the doing something
Now, are you an entrepreneur?
responsible.
You're not.
Yes.
Okay. So how did you construct your routine, or did you have help, or how do you stick to it given these addict qualities of routine and
The hardest routine that I've had to stick to is, so I told you I'm writing a book,
uh-huh.
and writing a book has caused me to need to go inside of my cave because it's a part,
Yeah.
it's about me, but also self-help. But I'm writing this chapter about my childhood, right? And it's incredibly hard. And yet, in my schedule every week, I put in these writing blocks. Uh, and I found myself, oh, well, something came up and I couldn't really write during that time, right? And
Mm.
I had to get very, like, you're sitting down and you're writing, right? Nothing goes in those blocks. And I'm trying to create that structure, because the procrastinator in me, or the not wanting to deal with the
Avoider.
hard to write, yeah, the avoider in me, is trying to move away from that. But it's interesting. It's still a struggle, right? It's still something, like, I'm not perfect at this. I tell people that I work with, don't ever put me on a pedestal, because I'm human and I do the same work. I have to go inside of my cave just like everybody else. I just, based on my experience, have been able to, help people through some of their experiences by articulating kind of what's helped for me, or what didn't help for me, what was harmful to me going through this as the addict. Um, but structure is something that, it depends on what it is. I run 5 days a week. I don't run 7 days a week. Why? Because I'm an addict. And my brain tells me if five is good, seven is better. And I'm trying to create the balance in my life. So I
Yeah.
only allow myself to run 5 days a week rather than seven. I make my bed every day. I journal. I meditate. I do all of those things that help me to create structure, because structure, why it's important for addicts is because structure creates safety,
Mm.
right? It makes us feel like we are in control,
Yeah.
uh, that we're safe. And so that's why, when we're unable to create it for ourselves, it can be problematic.
What's one thing along this journey that's been the most surprising kind of aha um, benefit, something good that never would have happened had you not been an addict for 14 years? That you wouldn't change, you wouldn't give it back.
Uh, where my family is as human beings. Um, we we would not be where we are today from a emotional maturity standpoint. From a, we say what we mean what we say, but we don't say it mean. We have hard conversations. We have real conversations. We are the authentic version of ourselves rather than this ideal version that we thought we needed to become. I am so proud of who we are. And I'm talking about my two children and my husband and I. We've done the work, right? And it's
Right.
not just me. I obviously am the one that got sober, but there were rippling effects. And in order for us to be where we are today, they had to say I'm in,
Right.
right? They had to say I'm going to do this work right along with you. Um, and the pride that I have for the four human beings that we are, the fact that my husband and I have stayed married through all of this, and not only are we married, but we are better than we ever were, right?
Mm.
It has required us to be better than, because I got to the point where it's like, I don't need you anymore. I got to figure out if I want you. Right? I got to figure out if this version that I'm trying to create inside of me has you as my partner. And that work has been hard.
I've been with my wife for 19 years, and I can say as I change that because very similar to you, you have them as kind of the
Yeah.
stable anchor, and we're the ones always shifting and changing. And so, kind of like you said, it's like this version of me. Or I had a coach say, and this is kind of a interesting thing, but he goes, as a woman, most of their goals are to get married and have children. And so in a quote unquote, my wife has reached her goal. She married
Hmm.
me, she's had kids. She is what she aspired to be. So there's not necessarily the need to improve so much like myself of somebody who's gone to the bottom, and
But
left a wake of destruction in their path.
yeah. Well, and it's interesting because the one of the main reasons I work with families today, I will never forget it. I had been sober for about 6 months, where my husband and I were in the car, and I was telling him all these amazing things. I was like, I go to group, and there's this guy, and he's doing this, and I'm learning this, and I'm right. I was just so excited about life, and I looked over at him, and he was deadpan with his face just like move. And I looked at him. I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I'm so happy for you. But I went through this too, and I have nobody. What the hell am I supposed to do?"
Oh, how did
And
you, man?
I just looked at him. I was just like, because I had never considered it, right? And here I am growing, and here I am learning, and I'm transcending, and I'm doing all of these things, and he has no support. He continues to be isolated. He's dealing with the ramifications of the kids and me and all the things, and everything about our life is changing, and he has nobody. It is why I do what I do today, right? I worked with the addict for about 6 years and just felt this pull and this undeniable feeling that I needed to go help that version. I needed to go help the families transcend this thing because my husband and I destroyed this together. Now I'm the one using, and I take full responsibility for that, but he participated in the dynamic of this, right? And if we were going to make this work, I had to grow and he had to grow. But there was nobody helping sort of that family piece of it. And I can report we didn't grow at the same speed. And there were days in this thing where I was like, well, I'd either have to stay small or I'm going to outgrow him. And there's going to be too much water under the bridge, and this thing, we're just not going to make it through it, right? And I would do that, and then by the grace of God, here comes him, right? And he's growing and he's growing. And then it so it's not been at the same speed at all. Um,
How did
but
you initially get him like that initial feeling of support? Like I can see that conversation happening in the car. And how did you respond? But how did you get that initial hook to where he felt like, okay, she cares, I get it, and bring him along for the
yeah.
journey?
Yeah. Well, initially I was like, let's find you an Al-Anon meeting. Let's find you like-minded people that understand what you're going through, right? And he tried that a little bit and it wasn't a good fit for him.
Uh,
But then I started working in a facility where there are all of these different people and their spouses, and most of us that worked there were addicts, and
it's like
and
an inclusion thing almost.
it's
Like
a connection.
I want to be
It's a
included in your
connection.
recovery.
It's a connection, right? And instead of it being like I'm getting sober and I'm just leaving you in the dust, it's like let's figure out how to live this improved life, if you will, with these like higher levels of
Frequency,
being,
yeah,
yes, frequency, like together.
yeah.
Um, which and still, I mean, I'm not gonna again, not gonna blow. I'm not a smoke blower. This isn't like every day we're not
Yeah,
here,
it's hard.
right? And I try to do a lot of the things that I did with the kids, which I'm just gonna model this version of myself, and I hope that you like it enough that you want to be curious about how you become that yourself.
Ah, mm,
Um, and and we're
which
going through
is
right now where it's like he wants to exercise more, but he doesn't. I'm just trying to model. Like I'm just trying to model, right? And we'll see if that is something that he ends up doing. But um I don't know. It was hard. I'm not going to tell you it wasn't. It was definitely hard, and some relationships shouldn't make it out of addiction.
Yeah,
I think it's important for your viewers to hear that, right? There are some relationships that should not make it through this thing. And then there are some that you give it your best shot, and some will make it and some won't.
that's hard. I mean, like I said, we've been together 19 years, and even if you didn't have alcohol or substances in
Yeah.
there, 19 years of two people being together and changing. I mean, she threw me my 30th birthday and I'm 49. I'll be 50 next year. It's like, yeah,
I
it,
mean,
it,
I think about the version I was 23 when I got married. Like, I'm not even close to that version of a human being.
yeah.
You
And
know, like
so
it's
you're growing
miraculous.
and then you're trying to keep
Yeah.
it, without the gap getting too big. And,
Yeah.
and so that's what I always say is, you know, uh, especially if you're have the affliction we have, because I tell you what, it is so fucking easy to run away and say, just fuck it, call it
Yep.
quits.
Yep.
We don't have to do this.
Yep.
And so, to hear you say like, oh, 29 years, I mean, um, deciding to stick it through and do hard for that long, given all of that, and not just say, fuck it, I've had enough and run away or at least step away
I'm a
is
pretty stubborn person.
commendable.
I'm a pretty stubborn person. I think you can probably tell that, right? I don't quit easily.
Me
Uh,
too. Sometimes
yeah.
to a detriment.
Yep, for sure. Uh, and my husband and I have been through, I mean, if we, like, you can only imagine what
Yeah.
we've been through, right? Um, but there was always this underlying respect and always this underlying love. And it was never an abusive situation. And it was like, let's see if we can make this work. And we both knew that we may get to a point where there might be too much water under the bridge, but we would have left at that point with still the deep respect and deep love for one another. Just realized that, we had just been through too much. But by the grace of God, we have been able to figure it out. Pretty hard though.
So, is there anything I haven't asked you that you wish I would have?
I think I would have loved to have answered the question of how is my son doing now?
How is he doing?
He is thriving. And again, he's got to go inside of his cave sometimes, but he recently bought a house and has a 1 year old little girl. He gave me my first grandbaby, which is just the absolute joy of my life. And watching that kid be a warrior and face his demons and his battles and not quitting has been one of the most rewarding experiences that I've walked through.
Well, he's lucky because he's got you as a mom
Thank you.
modeling. And, I mean, I love my mom, but she doesn't have the same affliction that I have. And, she's always been the sober bystander of the people in her family. And, so yeah, I don't have that, and I'm an
Yeah.
only child. I don't have that connection support, if you will, from her. And
Yeah.
that's why I say, I mean, man, worth the weight in gold to have a mother who's not only understanding, not judgmental, but models the behavior. That's that's huge. So lucky him. And
Thank you.
but yeah, that's pretty much it. And man, that seems like a good place to wrap it up. And I appreciate you spending your time with me and going so deep on this. It was,
It was great.
yeah, man, such a great story. And you give me a lot to think about, because I'm 2 years in and still
Yeah.
working and still got a lot of work to do. But I absolutely love how you've brought the families in and you're focusing on that because we're addicts. We'll be fine. If not, we'll expire and be fine. That's what we
But
do, I
we've got to
guess.
heal. We've got to heal together, right? Because
Yeah.
lot of us, the trauma comes from this family system, and the family system is one of the reason why solution became the solution, or substance became the solution. So it's not enough for us to just get sober and to get back on this dance floor, if you will, with these people where the dynamic is still the same. So in order for us to heal, we've got to do one of two things. We've either got to not get back on this dance floor with these people, or we've got to, the whole dance floor has to heal. And my wish is that the whole dance floor heals, right? That we all learn our part in all of this. And so that this is the thing, we've suffered enough from addiction.
Hmm.
And it's not about the substance, and it never will be about the substance. It's about healing these traumas and the shame and the experiences that we experience on these dance floors. And so that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I deserve it as the addict, and the family deserves the peace as the bystanders.
Man, 100%. I love it. Well, my call to action as we end every episode is go out and be the person that you would want to meet. And
Mm,
I'm certainly glad I got to meet you today. You've left me with quite a bit, and I'm very grateful. So
thank
thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hope you have a great rest of your day, and I will send all the stuff over
I
when
love it.
release is
Thanks
going to
so
come out.
much. It was great.
All right. Well, have a great
Okay.
rest of your day.
Okay.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.
Asteroid of fear.